My name is Josh Sosnow. I'm a practicing small animal veterinarian and owner of 2 veterinary hospitals in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm a graduate of the Oregon State University College of Veterinary Medicine and did an internship in small animal medicine and surgery at the Animal Medical Center in New York City. I am a strong advocate for the incorporation of the endocannabinoid sciences into veterinary medicine. Thank you for your interest in this emerging area of science and the privilege of your time. So I've included a glossary of terms that one can reference back to during the course of the presentation, should you have any questions about the terms that I'll be using. In 2018, the legal status of cannabis changed dramatically. That is to say that with the passage of the Hemp Farming Act of 2018, we created a new legal definition separating hemp from marijuana. This definition is based on the amount of THC contained in the plant. That is to say that any marijuana plant containing more than 0.3% THC will now be considered marijuana, while any plant containing less than 0.3% THC will now be considered hemp. The Farm Bill ensures that any cannabinoid that is derived from hemp will be legal if and only if that hemp is produced in a manner consistent with the Farm Bill and associated federal, state, and regulatory guidelines. So under the Farm Bill, there will be legal CBD products, but this does not mean that all CBD products are legal moving forward. Knowing your producer and whether they are legal and legitimate will be an important part of consumer research in a post-2018 Farm Bill world. Furthermore, the bill will allow states to decide whether they want to approve the sale of CBD products within their state borders as long as it's derived from industrial hemp. Now, this is in contrast to the FDA's position. Despite the removal of hemp-derived CBD as a Schedule I drug by the DEA, the FDA retains oversight over cannabis-derived compounds under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. It also allows the FDA to create potential regulatory pathways for products containing cannabis-derived compounds moving forward. Please pause here to read this article from the FDA. The reality of the CBD marketplace is in direct contrast to and in violation of the FDA. CBD-based products are widely available online, in stores, and in many veterinary practices. The FDA has decided not to aggressively enforce regulations and shut down most operators in this space until they provide clarification of their position and hold public hearings with more stakeholders. Keep in mind, veterinarians have not been targeted thus far by the federal government, but the FDA does retain that authority at any time. Most companies are operating with the assumption that the safety profile, the clinical applications, and the established, rapidly expanding market will allow for a positive change in the regulatory status of CBD with respect to the FDA. So a few take-home facts about CBD regulation. The first is that the DEA has removed cannabidiol as a Schedule I drug according to the Controlled Substances Act. The FDA views CBD as a drug, not as a nutritional or dietary supplement. The FDA enforcement has been limited to manufacturers that make erroneous claims about their products. They have not pursued most companies that are actively engaged in selling, manufacturing, or extracting CBD. The FDA has allowed states to pass legislation governing the sale and use of CBD in direct contrast to the FDA's designation of CBD as a drug. If a practitioner decides to sell CBD products, they would technically be in violation of the FDA and their state law, but only if their state restricts the sale of CBD to specially licensed facilities. So the safest route to explore your ability to advise clients about CBD is to contact your state veterinary examining board and your state's cannabis regulatory authority. Living in a state with legal medicinal or recreational marijuana does not guarantee legal access to CBD. But keep in mind that there is legislation currently pending in a number of states which may change the position of state authorities regarding the use and sale of CBD. Please pause here to review these websites to understand your state's guidelines regarding the sale and use of CBD. So the origins of the ECS can be traced back millions of years. The ECS is composed of multiple receptor families, endogenous cannabinoid compounds, the enzymes that synthesize and degrade those compounds, and the GI microbiome. It is also referred to as the endocannabinoid biome. But the complexity of the system has only been explored on a limited basis in the last 20 years. From an evolutionary perspective, comparative studies suggest that an ancestral cannabinoid receptor was present in the last common ancestor before divergence of all the major kingdoms. Factors that drove increasing complexity of the endocannabinoid system are things like increased nervous system complexity, increased metabolic activity, immune system activation, and energy-intensive foraging and predation strategies. The endocannabinoid system's major homeostatic functions can be summarized as anything involved with relaxation, eating, sleeping, memory, and protection. And the take-home message here is that there's very high conservation of the endocannabinoid system between veterinary patients and people, so much so that there are similar pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. There's a tremendous amount of valuable research dating back 30 plus years that we can draw on to understand how the phytocannabinoids can be used in veterinary patients. There are two primary endogenous cannabinoids that act as primary signaling molecules throughout the body, AEA and 2AG. These are synthesized on demand from membrane-derived phospholipids in postsynaptic neurons. They act as chemical messengers which affect neurotransmitter release. The two primary endocannabinoid receptors are CB1 and CB2. Now, there are additional receptor families that interact with the phytocannabinoids, but thus far, many of those targets have been considered orphans simply because we don't understand their mechanisms of action. With respect to the CB1 receptor, it predominates in the brain and the skeletal muscle, but can also be found in pain pathways in the brain, spinal cord, and on peripheral sensory neurons. Activation of the CB1 receptor causes retrograde suppression of neurotransmitter release, which may be excitatory or inhibitory depending on its location in the brain. CBD is also a negative allosteric regulator of the CB1 receptor and adversely affects the binding affinity of THC for the receptor, which antagonizes the effects of THC pharmacodynamically. It's an interesting point to consider CBD as part of a possible treatment regimen for marijuana toxicity. However, it should also be noted that when CBD is administered prior to THC, it potentiates the effect of THC. The CB2 receptor is primarily distributed in peripheral tissues and cells of the immune system, the spleen, reproductive tissues, but can also be found in areas of the brain. Now, the variability in receptor distribution throughout tissues in the body, along with multiple modes of action of the endogenous cannabinoids, make the application of phytocannabinoids in a clinical environment a process of discovery. Two patients with the same condition and of the same weight may require different therapeutic approaches in order to reach the same desired therapeutic endpoint. But despite our knowledge of the ECS to date, our understanding of the system is still in its infancy, as evidenced by the fact that CBD's mechanisms of action are still not fully elucidated. So, a little bit about the phytocannabinoids. The phytocannabinoids are a group of compounds that are commonly found in plants of the cannabis genus. THC and CBD are the two best studied phytocannabinoids from the genus and some of the most abundant due to selective breeding. Greater than 100 phytocannabinoids have been identified, many of which likely hold therapeutic potential. This slide does a good job of illustrating some of the many pathways through which the phytocannabinoids act. This concludes Module 301 in Veterinary Medicine. This has been approved continuing education for licensed veterinary medical professionals. In this course, we covered the following: the legal status of CBD in the United States, what is cannabidiol and a little bit about its chemistry. We talked about the endocannabinoid system and how it works. We talked about CBD as a therapeutic agent for canine patients, and discussed recent studies, clinical indications, and administration of CBD and potential side effects. Now it's time for the final test of 30 questions. Good luck. You must achieve a score of 80% or greater to pass the course. After you have successfully passed the course, please download your certificate of completion and retain that for your records, as well as obtaining your approved continuing education credits. Thank you for the privilege of your time and the opportunity to share with you what we have discovered to date. See you in the next course. I'm Dr. Josh Sosnow.